Good morning, students. So, how are you guys? Good morning, Neha, Parth, Mohammed, Nikita, Ajay, Kadambri, and all of you. It's nice talking to you once again. So, students, कैसी तैयारी चल रही है आपकी? How are your preparations going? Hope you are learning well. So, today we shall be starting a new chapter. Yes, good morning, Lokesh, Rituraj, Bala Murali Krishna. Today we will be starting a new chapter, that is chapter 6 on audit documentation, which appears in your module 2. So students, it is one of the shortest and easiest chapters in both of your modules, and you will be able to understand it quite quite easily also. Yes, Parth, you are saying you are learning every day. That's fine. Okay. So shall we start, students? So today's chapter, students, is related to audit documentation. Yes, guys, can anybody tell me what is the meaning of audit documentation? What do you understand by audit documentation? Forget your study material. Just tell me from your common sense, what do you mean by documentation? Okay. Tell me one thing. What do you mean by documentation? Yes, guys. Tell me, what do you mean by documentation at the first place? What is the meaning of the term documentation? Yes, yes. Yes, students, can anybody of you tell what is the meaning of audit documentation, or what is the meaning of just documentation? Yes, yes, you are writing many things, and all the things you are writing are near the mark. So, Rituraj, you are writing documentation of audit procedures performed. Yes. Venya, you are writing down properly. Yes. Sanjana, noting down. Yes, to document audit work. So, students, what does this term documentation means? Documentation means to put something in writing. To put something in writing, as Venya has stated, that documentation means to put something in writing. So audit documentation is when we document the things related to audit. So when we write down, when we document how audit procedures were performed, what was the evidence obtained, and what were the conclusions reached by the auditors. So all these things are put into writing by the auditor. So this is the nature of audit documentation, that you have to put everything into writing. So there is a separate essay on this. It is known as SA 230. So SA 230 students deals with auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statements. And also in this chapter, there is reference to SQC1, that is a standard on quality control. So this particular essay, students, SQC1, you would be reading in chapter 11 in your last chapter. However, at some places in your module, reference is given to SQC1 also, wherever these some of the aspects are related to SA 230. So we will be touching upon this also. Okay, students. So we shall be doing mainly essay 230. So the name of essay is audit documentation. Okay, is that clear? Yes, students. Is that clear? So essay 230 on audit documentation deals with auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statements. So what does audit documentation basically means? Audit documentation refers to three things, students. You have to remember. Audit documentation refers to three things. It is a record of three things. Learn the definitions right away, students, here now itself. Audit documentation is a record of three things. It is a record of audit procedures performed. It is a record of relevant audit evidence obtained. And it is a record of conclusions reached by the auditor. So when you conduct audit of financial statements, obviously you would be performing all the procedures, all the audit procedures. You would be inspecting the documents. You would be observing many things. You would be observing, say, operation of internal controls, or you would be observing physical inventory count process. So these are all the audit procedures which are performed by the auditor. So what kind of audit procedures were performed by the auditor? So one part of audit documentation is that it is the record of audit procedures performed. Okay. And second part is it is a record of relevant audit evidence obtained. Now, what audit evidence was obtained by the auditor? Like when he checked, when he observed physical inventory count process, what were his observations? Did he find anything unusual? Did the inventory count tally with the stock records finally? So all these things are in the nature of audit evidence. So the auditor would be documenting the relevant audit evidence obtained by performance of audit procedures. Okay. And conclusions the auditor reached. Conclusions the auditor reached means finally what conclusions did the auditor arrive at after obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Okay, clear, students? So remember that audit documentation is a record of three things. Again, students, remember that audit evidence is audit documentation is a record of three things. Number one, it is a record of audit procedures performed. Number two, it is a record of relevant audit evidence obtained. And number three, it is a record of conclusions reached by the auditor. Yes, yes, Ashok, we are at page 6.4 of your module 2. We are at page 6.4 of your module 2. So students, tell me what could be the likely benefits of audit documentation. Yes, just from your common sense point of view, students, do not see the module. Do not send me your bookish answers. Just tell me from your common sense point of view, whatever you have gathered till now, what are the likely benefits of audit documentation, or what could be the likely benefits of audit documentation? Yes. Yes, guys. What could be the likely benefits of audit documentation? How does audit documentation help finally? Yes, yes, guys. Yes, paths for compliance, you are writing. Yes, it's correct. Yes, Rachna, you are saying it will be helpful for making records. Yes, that's also correct. If there is any dispute, then auditor can show that he or she has done particular work. Yes, absolutely fine. Perfect, Rachna. So, Venya, you are saying gives proof that audit has been performed. Yes. Avni provides a true and fair view. No, Avni, you are off the mark. So, Srinivasan, yes, it will be helpful to understand the business and its internal control. That's a part of it. Yes. Yes. So many of you are writing many things. So most of you are on the mark, guys. Yes, and Darshana, you are saying what is the difference between audit documentation and audit report? So, Darshana, I will be taking your query afterwards when we will be taking remaining queries also. So, let these pile up. Yes. Abhishek, you are also right. Can be starting point for future audits. Yes. So, students, remember that without audit documentation, how an auditor is going to prove that he performed the audit in accordance with standards on auditing? Say if I perform an audit and I do not keep any record, that how at which date I conducted, I attended physical inventory count process, say, or what documents did I inspect, or say I do not maintain any record how I selected samples, and on the basis of samples which items were checked by me, which heads of accounts were checked by me, or within those heads of accounts, what did I check? If I do not maintain any record of all these things, if I fail to make any record of all these things, then how I am going to prove that audit was indeed carried out by me in accordance with standards on auditing and in accordance with legal and regulatory requirements? How I will be able to defend myself? Yes. So therefore, students, you have to understand that importance of audit documentation is tremendous. Without proper audit documentation, audit has no legs to stand upon. When all these things are properly documented, when all these things are properly put into writing, then only we can say that audit was indeed planned and performed in accordance with standards on auditing and in accordance with legal and regulatory requirements. Okay, so this is the basic main benefit and objective, you can say, of audit documentation. All other things are ancillary to it. All other things are incidental to it, which flow from it. Okay, so objective of auditor is to prepare documentation that provides a sufficient and appropriate record of the basis for auditor's report. Now, students, the auditor would be expressing his opinion through the audit report, by the means of audit report. So therefore, audit documentation provides a record that how did the auditor arrive at his opinion, which he has expressed in the auditor's report. And second, it goes on to show that audit was planned and performed in accordance with standards on auditing and applicable legal and regulatory requirement. So these are the objectives of auditor as per SA 230. Okay, guys. So what is the purpose of audit documentation? The purpose of audit documentation is assisting the engagement team to plan and perform the audit. So obviously, if you put everything in writing, so it helps the engagement team to perform the audit. Like say, when an audit program is given to you and you perform the audit in accordance with instructions given in the audit program, then obviously it is helping you to perform the audit, and it is helping the engagement team members to perform the audit in a proper and methodical way. So audit program is also an example of audit documentation. It shows that who performed the audit, on which date, what kind of procedure was performed by him. So it is also an exercise in record keeping. Okay. Assisting members of engagement team to direct and supervise the audit work. So obviously it helps the engagement partner to supervise the audit work, to monitor the audit work, how different engagement team members are conducting their work. It helps him to keep a tab on their work. Okay. It enables the engagement team to be accountable for its work. So these are all points connected with one another. Retaining a record of matters of continuing significance to future audits. So when you keep a record in the form of audit documentation, it acts as a reference point for future audits. So say you are auditor of a company for last 3 years, and in fourth year, say some issue comes to you, and you can see your audit working papers, you can see your audit documentation of past years. Okay, so it can be helpful for the auditor in future audits. Enabling the conduct of quality control reviews and inspections in accordance with SQC1. So students, you have to understand that auditor has to perform his work qualitatively. Every audit firm has to maintain a system of quality control in his firm, and every firm has to establish policies and procedures in this regard, so that work performed is as per standards on auditing and as per applicable legal and regulatory requirements, so that in future, if some regulatory issue comes, then the firm can show that audit was indeed planned and performed in accordance with standards on auditing. Okay, so you would be reading more about SQC1 in chapter 11, as I have been telling you. So you just understand that SQC1 is a quality control standard, and it applies to all engagements, and it deals with auditors' responsibility to maintain a quality control system in the firm to ensure that audit is carried in accordance with professional standards, that audit is carried in accordance with standards on auditing, in accordance with legal and regulatory requirements, and the report issued is appropriate. Okay. Enabling the conduct of external inspections. So again, if some regulatory issue arises, and say some regulatory authority asks for the proof as to how the audit was performed, so in those cases, audit documentation comes handy. So therefore, to maintain audit documentation is mandatory for the auditor. It is compulsory for the auditor, because in the absence of audit documentation, all the things would just be oral things. So therefore, auditor has to document everything. He has to document how did he plan his audit. He has to document which procedures were performed by him. He has to document the relevant audit evidence obtained by him after performing various procedures. And finally, what conclusions did he arrive at after obtaining audit evidence? This has also to be documented by him, because it is on the basis of conclusions that he would be finally expressing his opinion in the audit report. Okay. Yes. Yes, guys. Is it clear? So, again, students, audit documentation provides evidence of the auditor's basis for conclusion about the achievement of overall objectives of the auditor. So, what were the overall objectives of auditor? Students, remember chapter 1. Now go straight away to chapter 1. What are the overall objectives of auditor? To obtain reasonable assurance. About what? To obtain reasonable assurance about whether financial statements are free from material misstatements. So how the auditor would be expressing this opinion? He would be expressing this opinion by arriving at conclusions. So how he has arrived at the conclusions? He has arrived at the conclusions by obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence. And how audit evidence has been obtained? It has been obtained by performing audit procedures. So this is the chain. This is the sequence you have to remember, guys. Yes. So audit documentation, again, it provides evidence that audit was planned and performed in accordance with standards on auditing and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Okay. सो स्टूडेंट्स, आपको ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का मतलब समझ में आ गया? अगर आपको इसका मतलब समझ में आ गया है तो आप सारी चीजें इस चैप्टर की उसके मतलब से ही डराइव्ड हैं. ऑल द थिंग्स stated in this chapter flow from the meaning of audit documentation. So it is very important for you to remember the exact meaning of audit documentation. Okay, so remember, students, again I am repeating it, and I want that at least you learn the definition of audit documentation from this very class. So again I am repeating that audit documentation is a record of audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and conclusions reached by the auditor. Three things you have to remember, and keep it in mind that without audit documentation, audit has no legs to stand upon. It is only audit documentation which goes on to prove, which goes on to show that audit was in fact planned and performed in accordance with standards on auditing. It was planned and performed in accordance with legal and regulatory requirements. It is only audit documentation which will prove these things. Okay. Yes. So form, content, and extent of audit documentation. Form, content, and extent of audit documentation. So what should be the form of audit documentation? And what should be its content, and what should be its extent? These are all the things which are dealt within Essay 230. So what should be the form of audit documentation? Now Essay 230 states, students, that an auditor shall prepare audit documentation that is sufficient to enable an experienced auditor having no previous connection with the audit to understand the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures performed, the results of audit procedure performed and audit evidence obtained, and significant matters arising during the course of audit. Now, what is the meaning of this, guys? So the auditor has to prepare the audit documentation in such a way that any person, that any experienced auditor. Who is an experienced auditor? Experienced auditor is a person who has knowledge of auditing processes, who has understanding and practical knowledge of auditing processes and standards on auditing and legal and regulatory requirements. Now, the form of audit documentation has to be such that if any other person who has knowledge of these things, which we call as an experienced auditor, by going through that audit documentation, he is able to understand that what was the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures performed, that how the auditor carried out his audit procedures, what kind of audit procedures he carried out, to what extent he performed those procedures. He should be able to understand this by going through the documentation of this auditor. Okay, and the audit documentation should be such that he shall be able to understand the result of the audit procedures performed, that whatever procedures were performed by the auditor, so by performing those procedures, what results were obtained by the auditor. So it should be crystal clear in the documentation itself. What was the audit evidence obtained? What were the significant judgments reached by the significant matters which arose during the course of auditor? These all things should be documented. So the form of audit documentation should be such that it would help understand an experienced auditor who is not conducting the audit, just by going through the audit documentation, to see how the audit was performed. So he should be in a position to make a judgment just by seeing the documentation, whether the audit was performed in accordance with standards on auditing and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Okay. Yes. So, guys, you understand what I am trying to say? You understand the meaning of experienced auditor. So, स्टूडेंट्स, मैं आपको एक बार हिंदी में भी एक्सप्लेन कर देता हूं कि ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन ऐसी होनी चाहिए जो कि किसी एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर को, कोई भी एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन पढ़ के समझ सके कि ऑडिट कैसे परफॉर्म किया गया है, कि क्या क्या ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स उस ऑडिटर ने परफॉर्म किए हैं, क्या क्या उसके रिजल्ट्स थे, और क्या क्या सिग्निफिकेंट मैटर्स जो हैं ऑडिट के दौरान आए और जो उसने डॉक्यूमेंट किए, जिसके बेसिस पे उसने अपनी ऑडिट रिपोर्ट इशू की. ठीक है, तो एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर का रेफरेंस इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में दिया गया है. एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर का मतलब है ये नहीं कि कोई भी लेमैन. एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर का मतलब है एक ऐसा आदमी जो कि ऑडिटिंग के बारे में जिसको नॉलेज है, जो कि ऑडिटिंग की उसको प्रैक्टिकल नॉलेज है और स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑन ऑडिटिंग की भी नॉलेज है और उसको लीगल रेगुलेटरी रिक्वायरमेंट्स की भी नॉलेज है. एक्सपीरियंस ऑडिटर मीन्स ए पर्सन हु हैज प्रैक्टिकल नॉलेज ऑफ ऑडिटिंग and who has also knowledge of standards on auditing and legal and regulatory requirements and also of the nature of the business of the company. Okay. Yes. Yes, guys, clear. So further, in documenting the nature, timing and extent of audit procedures, the auditor shall record. Now what things shall be recorded by the auditor in documenting the nature, timing and extent of audit procedure? He would document, he would put into writing the characteristics of specific items or matters tested. Like, क्या मतलब है स्टूडेंट इसका? Like, say you verified sales bills of the company. Okay. So you would write that you took a sample of this size and you tested these items. Okay, say you performed you verified sale bills of a month. So you would write that these bills of these months or these periods were verified, these were tested by me. Okay. And who performed the audit work? So this is also very important. Now, obviously, all the work is not going to be performed by one person. So obviously, in an engagement team, we have read in the chapter 2 on audit planning that the work is divided, that different works may be allocated among different team members, among different engagement team members. So which kind of work was performed by which member, and when such work was completed? So what is the purpose of this? So again, the purpose of this is to enable the experienced auditor, a person who has not conducted this audit, it can make him understand that what kind of work was performed by which team member. Okay. And who reviewed the audit work performed and the date and extent of such review. So obviously, before issuing an audit report, students, you would read it later in chapter 11. Before signing on the dotted lines, the engagement partner reviews the work. Okay. So he makes an assessment of the overall work done by the team members. So this point has also to be documented, like who reviewed the audit work and the date and extent of such a review. Okay. So the auditor shall document discussion of significant matters with the management. So if some important matter has arisen during the course of audit, so it becomes important for the auditor to put it into writing. Like say some important matter relating to some accounting standard comes into the fore, and the auditor has a different point of view. So the matter is, say, suppose discussed with the management, and say the issue is resolved. So, but it would be proper for the auditor to document it, because it would show that a particular issue had arisen that that the auditor had taken care of this issue, and this matter was discussed with the management and how it was resolved. Okay. So if the auditor identified information that is inconsistent with audit firm's conclusion regarding a significant matter, the auditor shall document how the auditor addressed this inconsistency. So if there is some uh, inconsistency with in relation to the auditor's final conclusion regarding some important matter, then auditor has to document how that inconsistency was addressed, how that inconsistency was resolved. Okay. So clear to you, students, form, content, and extent of audit documentation. Is it clear to you? So obviously, students, the form, content, and extent of audit documentation depends upon many factors. The size and complexity of the entity. Obviously, if an organization is quite complex, say it has many branches, it has many components, or it is of huge size, so audit documentation would be is likely to be very extensive. It is likely to be quite voluminous. And nature of audit procedures performed. So obviously, what kind of audit procedures were performed directly affects audit documentation, because we know that audit documentation is a record of audit procedures performed. So the identified risks of material misstatements. So if the risk of material misstatements are have been identified to be greater, obviously the auditor would be performing more extensive procedures. So therefore, in that case also, the content of audit documentation is likely to be extensive as compared to the case where risk of material misstatement is identified to be low. Okay. So significance of audit evidence obtained. This is also directly related to the definition of auditing or definition of audit documentation. The nature and extent of exceptions identified. So obviously, uh, if some exception has been identified, um, some deviation has been identified, then obviously this this has to be documented, that how this exception was resolved, how this exception was addressed by the auditor. So obviously it would in part increase his audit documentation work. So therefore these are all kind of things upon which the audit documentation depends, and similar things. Okay. So examples of audit documentation include, so virtually you can say, students, all sort of things are part of audit documentation, like say audit programs, like say the mails you are sending to the company, the responses you are receiving from the company. Okay. Say the external confirmation requests and the responses you have received. So these are all examples of audit documentation, or you can say a piece of document is simple paper showing a checklist, like which procedures are to be performed. So these are all examples of audit documentation. Like say the auditor has conducted ratio analysis. the auditor has performed substantive analytical procedures, and during performance of these substantive analytical procedures, he has carried out certain analysis, say relating to various ratios which impact financial position of the company. So these are all examples of audit documentation. Okay. So the auditor may include copies of entities' records, like specific contracts and agreements, as part of audit documentation. Audit documentation is not a substitute for entities' accounting records. Now, this is important, students. So students, like say the company has entered into a contract with some customers, or say the company has given loan to some another company. So the auditor can keep such agreements, such loan agreements with him as part of audit documentation. So any kind of contract, any kind of agreement which goes on to prove some issue, that can be kept in the audit file as audit documentation. Okay. So remember, students, that audit documentation is not a substitute for entities' accounting records. Okay. Always remember that entities' records are to be maintained. This is responsibility of management. Audit documentation is no substitute of it. Okay. And say when you practically perform the work, obviously there can be many rough workings, and you may uh, finally discard those workings. So the auditor need not include in audit documentation superseded drafts of working papers and notes that reflect incomplete or preliminary thinkings. Suppose, friends, like you have performed some rough working for arriving at some conclusions. Later on, some more information comes to you, and then you refine those things. So, what you have to keep part of audit documentation is your final refined analysis, not all the tidbits, not all the rough workings. This is the meaning of this point. Okay. Yes. Clear, students? Now, timely preparation of audit documentation. Timely preparation of audit documentation. Yes, students, just tell me, just try to make an intelligent guess. Rather, I would say, just try to make an intelligent guess uh, that at what time audit documentation should be prepared. Yes, at what time audit documentation should be prepared? During the course of audit, I give you an option. During the course of audit, or after the audit is complete. Yes. Yes, students. Yes. Can anybody tell? Yes. Yes, students, just think from your common sense point of view. Just think from your common sense point of view, at what time audit documentation should be prepared? During the course of audit, as the audit progresses, or after the audit is over? Yes. Yes, students. आप इंटेलिजेंट हो गए हैं काफी. सब लोग लिख रहे हैं कि ड्यूरिंग द कोर्स ऑफ ऑडिट. ओके, सो दैट्स राइट. सो स्टूडेंट्स, audit documentation has to be prepared as the audit progresses. As the audit progresses, simultaneously audit documentation has to be prepared. So remember, students, that audit documentations is also known as by the name of audit working papers or audit work papers generally. Okay. So all of you are writing during the course of audit. Now, can you tell me, students, why it is so? Why audit working papers, why audit documentation is to be maintained as the audit progresses? Yes. Yes. Yes, students, can you think of any reason? Can you think of any reason why it is so? Yes. Anyone? Why it is so? Yes. Yes, anybody? Yes, Yuvraj. Yuvraj Joshi is writing because keeping of important points. Yes, Yuvraj, you are right. So, students, just understand that if you write something, if you jot down something after performing a procedure, then it would help you in recording correct information. Say if you document that information after say a month of performing that procedure, you may document incorrect things, because many things would be skipped by you, or you may not write correct things. Like say you attended physical inventory count process of the company. So if you did not write your observations at that moment, at that point when you attended the physical inventory count, there is a probability then you would be writing this information from just conjectures and guesses after a say period of 15-20 days. Okay, so obviously it helps in recording the information, it helps in recording the evidence accurately. Okay. So the auditor shall prepare audit documentation on a timely basis. So SA 230 writes that auditor shall prepare documentation on a timely basis. Preparing audit documentation on a timely basis helps to enhance the quality of audit and facilitates the effective review and evaluation of audit evidence obtained and conclusion reached before the audit report is finalized. Because, say students, if you record your observation, if you record audit documentation timely, then you can review it also. Then you have got a time to review it. Okay. So documentation prepared after the audit work has been performed is likely to be less accurate. Now this is the point. This is the point I have been harping upon, and this is the point many of you have written correctly. So documentation prepared after the audit work has been performed is likely to be less accurate than documentation prepared at times such work is performed. Okay. Clear, students? So you have to prepare audit documentation in a timely manner. So timely manner का ये मतलब नहीं है कि immediately लिखना है. Obviously, you would like the relevant procedure to be concluded, and then you have to finally write the final. You have to document the final audit evidence. Okay. So clear, students? Now audit file. Now what is audit file? सो किसी भी एक एंगेजमेंट के बारे में जो सारी ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन होती है, जो एक फाइल में लगा दे, चाहे वो फिजिकल फाइल है या वो इलेक्ट्रॉनिक फाइल है. सो वेदर इट इज ए फिजिकल फाइल और इलेक्ट्रॉनिक फाइल, इट इज कॉल्ड एज ऑडिट फाइल. So audit file may be defined as one or more folders or other storage media in physical form or electronic form. Okay, it can either be in physical form or it can be in electronic form, containing the records that comprise the audit documentation for a specific engagement. So here the point is, important point to remember is specific engagement. That for each engagement, for each specific engagement, there has to be a separate audit file containing audit documentation relating to that engagement. Yes, guys. Clear? Yes, meaning of audit file is clear to you? So जो एक ऑडिट के बारे में जो सारी ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन है वो एक फाइल में होगी, जिसको कि हम ऑडिट फाइल कहते हैं, व्हाट वी कॉल एज ऑडिट फाइल. So assembly of final audit file. So students, there is a difference between preparing audit documentation and assembly of final audit file. Like say you have documented all the procedures, you have documented all the audit evidence obtained, and you have also documented the conclusions reached by you. Okay, and finally audit report has also been issued. So you would be preparing the audit documentation as the audit has progressed. Now what happens is that that assembly of final audit file may take further time. So that is why because there may be some rough papers which need to be discarded, and like at some pages referencing may have to be given, or at some on some documents signatures are pending, or on some documents signatures of the persons who performed the work, these are pending. So these type of administrative work is called assembling of final audit file. So SQC1 states that an appropriate time limit for which to complete the assembly of final audit file is ordinarily not more than 60 days after the date of auditor's report. So क्या मतलब है इसका? इसका मतलब ये है कि ऑडिट रिपोर्ट इश्यू होने के बाद 60 दिन के अंदर तक, 60 दिन के भीतर, within 60 days, the assembling of final audit file should be completed. Now remember that assembly of final audit file is an administrative process. Assembly of audit file is an administrative process. Okay. So the completion of assembly of final audit file after the auditor's report is an administrative process that does not involve the performance of new audit procedures or drawing new audit conclusions. कोई उसमें ऑडिट रिपोर्ट इश्यू हो चुकी है तो इसमें नए ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स या कंक्लूजन्स अराइव करने का तो क्वेश्चन ही अराइज नहीं होता. सो इसका मतलब ये है कि जो भी आपने ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन अपनी फाइल में लगाया है, आपको और टाइम 60 दिन का दिया है कि उसको असेंबल प्रॉपरली करने के लिए, प्रॉपरली सॉर्टिंग करने के लिए. कुछ क्रॉस रेफरेंसिंग रह गई, कोई डॉक्यूमेंट्स आपको रीअरेंज करने हैं, कोई सिग्नेचर्स रह गए, इस टाइप के एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव वर्क करने के लिए 60 दिन का टाइम है. Okay, so remember students, this time of 60 days is for administrative work of assembling of final audit file. It does not relate to the audit documentation itself. Okay, but if we say that this is my audit file, by what time it should be completely ready so that I can show it to some person, so that it is capable of being shown to some other person. This is the meaning of assembly of final audit file. Okay. Clear students? So changes may be made to the audit documentation during the final assembly process if they are administrative in nature. Now example of such changes are, like I've been telling you, deleting or discarding superseded documentation. Like कोई आपकी रफ वर्किंग लगी हुई है, उसको आप निकाल के you would throw out such working. Sorting, collating and cross referencing working papers. कोई आपको किसी चीज का, किसी वर्किंग पेपर का किसी दूसरे के साथ लिंक करना है या उसको रेफरेंस देनी है कि ये उस पेज इस हेडिंग में लगा हुआ है ये वर्किंग पेपर, इस टाइप के काम. साइनिंग ऑफ ऑन कंप्लीशन चेकलिस्ट. ओके. Documenting audit evidence that auditor has obtained, discussed and agreed with the relevant members of engagement team before the date of auditor's report. That final thing that the auditor has discussed all the important matters before with the engagement team before the issue of auditor's report. This thing can also be put afterwards. This is a kind of administrative work. Okay. So another thing is, after assembly of final audit file has been completed, the auditor shall not delete or discard audit documentation of any nature before end of the retention period. एक बार स्टूडेंट्स, अगर आपकी ऑडिट फाइल की असेंबली कंप्लीट हो गई, ऑडिट फाइल कंप्लीट है, ऑडिट फाइल रेडी है, तो उसमें से कोई भी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन डिलीट या डिस्कार्ड नहीं होगा. ओके, सो दिस इज व्हाट SQC1 स्टेट्स. और वो ऑडिट फाइल आपको प्रिजर्व, for how long it has to be preserved? It has to be preserved for a period of 7 years. So this is very, very important, students. Many time correct incorrect type of question can come on this. So the retention period for the audit engagement ordinarily is no shorter than 7 years फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ ऑडिटर्स रिपोर्ट. जो ऑडिट रिपोर्ट की डेट है उसके 7 साल तक दिस एंगेजमेंट फाइल हैज टू बी रिटेन्ड. और इफ लेटर द ग्रुप ऑडिटर्स रिपोर्ट, और अगर कोई ग्रुप ऑडिट है तो उस डेट से, अगर कंसोलिडेटेड फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स है, ग्रुप ऑडिट मींस, सो फ्रॉम दैट डेट. सो retention period is for a period of 7 years from the date of auditor's report, or if CFS have been prepared, then from the date of the group auditor's report, the audit file, it has to be retained for a period of 7 years. For a period of 7 years. Very important, guys. Okay. So documentation of significant matters and related significant professional judgments. So obviously, during the course of audit, if some significant matters have come to the fore of auditor, then these have to be documented, because obviously these would be affecting auditor's opinion. Say if as a result of the procedures performed by the auditor, it has come to know that financial statement could be materially misstated, or there is a need to revise risk of material misstatement which was initially estimated. So this is a matter, this is a significant important matter, and it can give rise to significant risk. So such matters have to be documented. So circumstances that cause the auditor significant difficulty in applying necessary audit procedures. So if the auditor has had encountered some difficulty in performing some procedure, or if the management has been non-cooperative, so or the auditor has encountered some practical difficulties in performing the procedures, so the auditor would again document these things. So these are examples of significant matters. Okay. Or if, say, modification in opinion is required, in such circumstances, say an adverse opinion is to be issued, so, or disclaimer is to be issued, as you would be reading in your chapter on audit report. So these things are all examples of significant matters, and these would be definitely be documented. Okay. Now there is another important term, students, completion memorandum or audit documentation summary. So it is nothing but but a summary of important points. A summary of important points. So the auditor may consider it helpful to prepare and retain as part of audit documentation a summary, which sometimes is known as completion memorandum, that describes significant matters and how they were addressed. So say if the auditor has arrived at a conclusion that it would be necessary for him to modify his opinion. So we have learned that this is a significant matter. So what were the circumstances which led the auditor to believe uh, that opinion is to be modified? What sufficient appropriate audit evidence he has obtained to arrive at the conclusion that his opinion needs modification, and on what count, what is the basis for modification? So these are all examples of significant matters which have arisen during the course of audit, and the auditor can separately retain this as part of audit documentation summary or completion memorandum, some key significant points which arose during the course of audit. So this we call as uh, completion memorandum or audit documentation summary. Okay. Ownership of audit documentation. Yes. Ownership of audit documentation. Yes, students, tell me. Audit documentation, who owns the audit documentation? Just do not see from your module. Who owns the audit documentation? Whose property is audit documentation? Just make a guess. I know you are reading it for the first time. Make a guess. Whose property is it? To whom does audit documentation belong? To whom does audit working paper belong? Just make a reasonable, intelligent guess. Yes. Yes, anybody? Yes. Auditor. Yes, it's true. Sangeeta, how you are writing company? No. No, Sangeeta, no. Or remember simple logic. Who is preparing the audit documentation? Auditor. So whose property is it? It is the auditor. It is the property of the auditor. Okay. So SQC 1 states that unless otherwise specified by law or regulation, that if law says something to the contrary, then it is okay. So you would find such language in everywhere in essays. So it states that if law says something, then it is okay. It is subject to law. So always keep in mind, students, that essays do not override laws or regulations. So they always say if law says so, then it's okay. So if law doesn't say, if law or regulation doesn't say anything to the contrary, then audit documentation is the property of the auditor. it is the property of the auditor. Always remember this point, that audit working papers, audit documentation is owned by the auditor, but he may at his discretion make portions or extracts from audit documentation available to clients. लेकिन उसकी मर्जी है ऑडिटर की, डिस्क्रिशन का मतलब मर्जी, उसकी मर्जी है कि उसमें से कुछ या कोई, या उसकी मर्जी है कुछ ना भी दे, कोई वर्किंग पेपर वो अपने क्लाइंट के साथ शेयर कर सकता है, provided however there is a condition, provided that it does not undermine validity of his work performed or his independence. तो इसका क्या मतलब है स्टूडेंट्स? सपोज if you give your audit file to the to your client, so then the client would be knowing all the procedures you performed and how what is the process of conducting the audit, how you conduct an audit. There would be no surprise element left in such, if you share your complete audit file with the client. So ultimately these things would undermine the work performed by you. It might affect your independence, okay, because if you share your complete audit file with the client, then client would come to know that this is your procedure, this is the way you obtain your samples, this is the way you obtain and collect audit evidence, and this is the way you conduct your audit. So therefore it is left upon the discretion, it is left upon the discretion of the auditor to share some part of the audit file if he wants with this auditor, with this client, with the company, provided that it doesn't undermine validity of his work performed or his independence. Clear? Yes, friends, is this clear? Yes, Parth Rana, you are saying it correctly. They can get to know about procedures and loopholes. And yes, you are right, Parth. So just see this question, guys. During the course of audit of a company, okay, during the course of audit of a company, an issue arose relating to treatment of interest costs of the company on its restructured loans taken from bank. कंपनी के कुछ लोन रीस्ट्रक्चर हुए, so there is an issue, there is an accounting issue relating to treatment of interest costs. This important matter was discussed with CFO of the company and was properly resolved. Discussion कोई issue arise हुआ और वो issue resolve भी हो गया. Now is it necessary for the auditor to include in its working papers? Why or why not? Yes. Yes. Why or why not? Yes, only one male. What about others? Yes. Yes, all of you are right, students. Obviously, it should be documented because it is an important matter. Like say the company has taken loans, which were restructured, and there is an issue relating to the treatment of interest costs. It is an important matter. It is a significant matter directly impacting the profits of the company. So although the issue was resolved, it is necessary for the auditor to document it, to include in its working papers. It would, because ultimately it would go on to show that auditor raised this issue, and and this was the stand of the management, and this was how the issue was resolved. This was how a consensus was built upon and the issue was resolved. Okay. It would show that auditor performed the audit with professional skepticism, that he was alert, he was alive to the possibility of probable misstatements arising from this issue in financial statements. Okay. Yes, all of you are writing correctly. Now see, test your understanding too. CA Sonali has completed audit of a listed company. Okay. The audit report dated 15th July 22 has been issued. CA Sonali जो है वो she has completed the audit of a listed company. The audit report dated 15 July 22 has been issued. However, audit working papers, including record of discussions with management, detail of audit procedures performed, and conclusions reached by her have not been properly assembled. 6 महीने हो गए हैं ऑडिट रिपोर्ट इश्यू किए हुए, लेकिन ये चीजें जो हैं ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स, ये कोई उसकी असेंबलिंग नहीं हुई है. So more than 6 months have elapsed after issue of audit report. Subsequently, she has received a letter from regulator in connection with the audit of the company. So she has got a letter from the regulatory authority in connection with the audit of the company, and she has been asked to share her audit file, to share copy of her audit file. Now what she does is, so the letter has woken up from deep slumber. तो क्या हुआ स्टूडेंट्स, अब तो अभी तक तो वो सोई हुई थी, शी वॉज जस्ट स्लीपिंग, उसको ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का कोई ध्यान ही नहीं था. ओके. सो उसने फटाफट जो उसके पास वर्किंग पेपर से उसने फटाफट फाइल में लगाए और कुछ और पेपर लगा दिए जो जरूरी हैं. However, she put current date on these papers and sent file to the regulator to discuss the issues involved in context of audit documentation. So क्या issue involved है students? How you would tackle this type of question? Yes. Yes. Yes, students, have you understood? Have you understood? Test your understanding too. Yes, guys. What will you write in such type of question? Do not see the answer from your module. Yes, Srinivasan, you are you are right. So final assembly of audit file has to be done within 60 days of the issue of audit report. Okay. But here what we are seeing here, more than 6 months have gone after the audit report has been issued, and now when she has got letter from the regulatory authority, now she is assembling the वर्किंग पेपर्स। सो यहां तक भी ठीक था। आप कह सकते हैं कि किसी को क्या पता। ओके। सो ह्यूमन माइंड इज सच दैट ना, कि किसी को क्या पता कि मैंने 60 दिन में असेंबलिंग की है कि 6 महीने बाद में की है। क्यों? आदमी का दिमाग तो हमेशा ऐसी मैनिपुलेट करने के लिए सोचता है। सो लेकिन उस मैनिपुलेशन में उसने क्या किया, कुछ और पेपर जोड़ दिए जिसपे कि डेट उसने करंट डेट की डाल दी। सो शी वॉज कॉट। सो by inserting papers of current date, obviously she is proving that she failed to assemble the audit file in accordance with the SQC1 requirements within 60 days of the issue of audit report. And once students an audit has been completed, uh, and audit documentation has been prepared, it is not allowed to insert fresh documentation except in certain exceptional circumstances. Okay. So it goes on to show that it is that she has violated requirements of SA 230. That CS Sonali has violated requirements of SA 230, and she has violated requirement of SQC1 also. Okay. And the papers she is inserting now, okay, it would defile the sanctity of the audit report. Okay. Yes, clear guys? ठीक है स्टूडेंट्स? So we'll take a students will take a short break of 5 minutes and come back again after 5 minutes. Yes. So a short break of 5 minutes. Yes, guys. Short break of 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes only. Yes. Welcome back, guys. Yes. So, students, let us first take your queries. Yes, Darshana, you are asking what is the difference between audit documentation and audit report. Darshana, this should have been clear to you by now. Anyway, audit report, Darshana, you have to understand it is the final outcome of the audit process. It is the final outcome, it is the final document in which the auditor expresses his opinion, his or her opinion. It is the final document in which the auditor gives opinion as to the state of affairs of the concern, as to the state of affairs of the company, as to the results of the operations of the company. It is the final document which contains opinion, which contains expression of opinion, but it does not give detail of the various procedures performed by the auditor to arrive at those opinions, to arrive at that opinion. So whatever procedures were performed by the auditor, whatever the audit evidence was obtained by the auditor, whatever the conclusions were reached by the auditor, these are not stated in the auditor's report. These are stated in audit documentation. These things auditor keeps with him as part of his record, as part of evidence to show that audit was indeed planned and performed in accordance with professional standards. Okay. So the audit report is not going to include all these things, that I performed this procedure, that I performed inventory count process. The audit report would simply state the opinion of the auditor and basis for that opinion. Okay, it is not going to give detail of what was the sample size, which procedure was performed by whom. These all things are part of the workings of the auditor, which you can understand, like you are solving question in an exam. Okay, so one is your final answer, say in a numerical question, one is your final answer and another is your working notes. So these are sort of working papers. Okay, although in exams you would be writing both the things, but here in case of audit documentation, audit record of audit procedures performed, evidence obtained, is part of audit documentation and it is the property of auditor. It is generally not shared with the client or not given to him, whereas audit report is issued to the client. Okay. Yes, Darshana, is it clear to you? Yes. Yes. And Nagaraju, you are saying, yes, first Nivida. Nivida, you are saying audit program and audit documentation. What is the difference? So audit documentation, Nivida, is a very wide term and audit program is just one part of audit documentation. Like say audit documentation can include audit program. It can include mail sent by the auditor and responses received from the management. It can include confirmation requests sent by the auditor to third parties and responses received from them. So whereas audit program is just one part of audit documentation. Okay. Yes, Nagaraju, you are saying is that SA 230 is interconnected with SA 500. Now SA 500 deals with the audit evidence, and SA 230 Nagaraju, it deals with the responsibility of auditor in preparing audit documentation. It doesn't deal with the how audit evidence is to be collected. Whereas SA 500 deals with the meaning of audit evidence, with the it deals with such things like what is sufficient appropriate audit evidence, what is relevant audit evidence. But in SA 230 deals with auditor's responsibility in documenting these things, and in documenting not only audit evidence but also audit procedures and conclusions. Okay. Yes, Devraj, you are asking difference between inspection and audit. Now, Devraj, you have to understand that inspection means, say, if the audit firm is subject to some regulatory inspection, some government authority says that show me how the audit was conducted, then what you are going to show? Obviously, you would be having audit file with you as a proof, as a record that you have conducted the audit in accordance with standards on auditing. Yes, Rahul, you are asking audit trial is a prerequisite of audit documentation. No, probably Rahul, you are asking about audit trail. Not, you are not using the correct word. It is not trial. It is trail. It can't be said that it is a prerequisite, but it is one of the essential parts of audit documentation. It is not a prerequisite. Yes, Devraj, agreement papers. Agreement means any kind of agreement which the company has entered. Yes, Niveda, audit program is a kind of audit documentation. Yes, Parth, you are saying if there is a new appointment after the existing auditor, then documentation must be in such form. No, Parth, uh, you are writing about these lines which are written at page 6.5. Now, these Parth, you have to understand कि इन लाइंस का न्यू ऑडिटर या रिटायरिंग ऑडिटर से मतलब नहीं है. मैं आपको एक बार हिंदी में बताता हूं, उसके बाद मैं आपको आई ट्रांसलेट इट इन इंग्लिश. ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन की फॉर्म कैसी होनी चाहिए? SA 230 बता रहा है कि ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन की फॉर्म कैसी होनी चाहिए. मतलब ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन में क्या क्या होना चाहिए. तो उसका पर्पस ये है, ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन ऐसी होनी चाहिए. SA 230 ये कहता है कि ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन ऐसी होनी चाहिए कि जो एक एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर, एक्सपीरियंस ऑडिटर कौन है? मींस कोई भी एक ऐसा आदमी जिसको कि ऑडिटिंग की समझ है, जिसको कि ऑडिटिंग की प्रैक्टिकल अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, और जिसको कि स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑन ऑडिटिंग और लीगल रेगुलेटरी रिक्वायरमेंट्स के बारे में नॉलेज है, वो फाइल पढ़ के समझ पाए कि ऑडिट कैसा किया है, कि लाइक ये ऐसी रिक्वायरमेंट क्यों है एसए 230 में। ऐसी रिक्वायरमेंट रेगुलेटर्स के लिए है। मान लो कल को किसी रेगुलेटर के सामने या किसी गवर्नमेंट अथॉरिटी के सामने या और किसी जगह ऑडिटर को प्रूव करना पड़ता है कि उसने ऑडिट जो है अपना स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑन ऑडिटिंग के हिसाब से किया। सो हाउ ही वुड प्रूव? सो ऑडिट फाइल शुड बी सेल्फ स्पीकिंग। एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर का यही मतलब है कि वो सेल्फ स्पीकिंग होनी चाहिए, कि कोई एक आदमी जिसको कि ऑडिटिंग की प्रैक्टिकल नॉलेज है, जिसको कि ऑडिटिंग की प्रैक्टिकल समझ है और एसेस की समझ है, वो उसको पढ़ के, उस ऑडिट फाइल को पढ़ के ही शुड गेट ए कंप्लीट पिक्चर that how audit was conducted, that what were the audit procedures performed, what kind of procedures were performed, what was the timing of procedures, and what were the results obtained from such procedures, and what were the significant matters which arose during the course of audit. So you might have heard the term part like speaking order. कोई गवर्नमेंट अथॉरिटी कोई ऑर्डर पास करती है, से इनकम टैक्स में कई बार हम कहते हैं, या कोर्ट का कोई ऑर्डर है, स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर। सो व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ स्पीकिंग ऑर्डर? कि वो दैट ऑर्डर स्पीक्स फॉर इटसेल्फ, कि उसको कोई आदमी पढ़ के उसको समझ सकता है कि ये ऑर्डर के पीछे का लॉजिक क्या है। इसी तरह likewise audit form of audit file should be such, form of audit documentation should be such that it should be self speaking. It should be it should enable an experienced auditor to understand how an audit was conducted, that what were the audit procedures performed, that what were the significant matters arose during the course of audit. It should be self-speaking. It should be the audit document should be formed in such a way. Okay, Parth, is it clear to you? Yes, Parth, drop a mail. Is it clear to you? Yes, Devraj, you are saying in bank audit, check loan documents, deposit accounts. Now, these are all audit procedures. So it is in case of a bank audit, it would be a record of audit procedures performed. Such procedures would be audit procedures, and record of such audit procedures would be an example of audit documentation. Like I checked these numbers of loan accounts. Okay, so it would be a part of audit documentation. Okay. Yes, Harish Chandra, you are writing, is engagement letter part of documentation? Yes, definitely it is. Because it shows that audit was planned and performed in accordance with essays. Yes, Srinivasan, can you explain issues memoranda? Issues memoranda, what is memorandum, Srinivasan? Memorandum means to put something in writing. Okay, so issue memorandum means when say the auditor requires some information and he puts it down in writing. Say he has called some information from management, so he issues a memoranda. So this is the meaning of issues memoranda. Yes. Now, how many marks are allocated to this chapter? This you can, Devraj, this you can see from the website. It is already uploaded there on the BOS website. It is already uploaded. Yes, Srinivasan, you can link. Yes, Nagbala Murugan, you are saying, yes, Nagbala Murugan, you are saying, what you are saying? If CA Sonali is sharing audit file to the company, audit file comprises of audit documents. She is sharing not necessary documents, but not entire documentation. She is sharing only necessary documents, but not entire documentation. Is it correct? No, no, no. Nagbala Murugan, if she is sharing the complete audit file. She is sharing the complete audit file. You are getting it wrong way. Yes. Yes, Manohar. Yes, audit report final. It is the outcome of the audit. Yes, Manohar. Yes. Yes. And welcome, Devender Singh. Now you are writing what is the difference between bill and vouchers. Again, Devender Singh, again, you had earlier also, I think you had asked this question. So, voucher, you can say that what bill you can say bill is a complete document which shows like name of the person, which shows amount, which shows description. And voucher is generally used in the sense to whom you made the payment, or from whom you received the payment. Okay. Yes. Yes, students. Now we come on. So one more important thing in this chapter, students, you have to remember that you have to remember that this chapter requirements of audit documentation, there were certain requirements pertaining to audit documentation which you have been which you have learned in some other chapters also. Okay, which you have learnt in other chapter also. So students, can you tell some documentation requirements which you have learnt in other chapters also? No, Devender Singh, documentation is not part of audit report. In audit report, the auditor is only expressing an opinion. What procedures did he perform? Uh, what evidence he obtained? He is not going to write this in the audit report. This he will be keeping separately as part of audit documentation his audit file. Okay. What procedures he performed, what samples he collected, this is not stated in the final audit report. Okay. Yes. Yes, students, tell me where in which chapters did you study separate documentation requirements? कहीं और आपने documentation requirements पढ़ी है students? Yes. Yes, Sangeeta, you are stating chapter 2 documentation. Yes, chapter 2 में क्या पढ़ा था students आपने? What did you write in, what did you study in chapter 2 pertaining to documentation? Yes. क्या पढ़ा था स्टूडेंट्स आपने चैप्टर 2 में ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन के बारे में? यस, चैप्टर 2 में स्टूडेंट्स आपने पढ़ा था कि ऑडिट स्ट्रेटेजी, ऑडिट प्लान, ये सब चीजें भी डॉक्यूमेंट करनी है। पढ़ा था कि नहीं स्टार्टिंग में आपने चैप्टर 2 में? तो हियर इट वाज, यस, the auditor shall document the overall audit strategy, audit plan, and significant changes made during audit engagement. So here you had also read about audit documentation. Similarly, uh, similarly, in case of materiality, you had also learnt about audit. You had also learnt about documentation requirement. In chapter 3, we had also studied. Yes. So an important point here, students, is that the specific documentation requirements of other essays do not limit the application of this essay. कि अगर किसी और ऐसे में कुछ डॉक्यूमेंटेशन रिक्वायरमेंट लिखी हैं वो सेपरेट हैं, दीज आर सेपरेट, बट the requirements of other essays do not limit application of this essay. ये essay 230 जनरल डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन की रिक्वायरमेंट्स के बारे में है। अगर किसी और ऐसे में कुछ डॉक्यूमेंटेशन रिक्वायरमेंट सेपरेट लिखी हैं तो उस वजह से कोई essay 230 की एप्लीकेबिलिटी कोई लिमिटेड नहीं होती। सो दिस यू हैव टू रिमेंबर। ओके, yes, revision will start after what kind of revision you are asking, Devendra Singh? If you are asking revision of this chapter, so that you have to do it on your own. If you are asking about total revisions, now when revision will start, that is for board of studies to decide after the course ends. Okay. Yes. Now we will do some questions. Yes, students, we will do some questions, MCQs. We'll do some MCQs. Which of the following statements is likely to be false? Yes. Which of the following statement is likely to be false? Yes, students, which of the following statements is likely to be false? Audit documentation is record of audit procedures performed. Audit documentation is prepared after audit is completed. Nature and extent of audit documentation depends upon size and complexity of entity. And nature and extent of audit documentation depends upon nature of audit procedures performed. Yes. Yes. Which of the following statements is likely to be false? Yes. First B. Yes. Many of you have written it correctly. This statement is false, guys. Audit documentation is prepared after audit is completed. This is false. Audit documentation is prepared in a timely manner as the audit progresses. Okay. So this is false. It is only assembly of final audit file which is done after audit report is issued within 60 days of issuing of audit report. Okay. So it is only assembly of final audit file, not audit documentation. The audit documentation has to be done in a timely manner as audit procedures are performed. Okay. So first B option is false. All other three options are correct. Audit documentation is a record of audit procedures performed. This is also correct. So in the very definition of audit documentation, we had learned that audit documentation is a record of audit procedures performed. It is a record of audit evidence obtained, and it is a record of conclusions reached by the auditor. So A, C, D are right options. B is wrong option. Audit documentation is prepared after audit is completed. This option is false. This option is wrong. Okay. Yes. So number 2, assembly of audit file should be completed. Yes. Assembly of audit file should be completed. What is the right option? Assembly of audit file should be completed. Yes, students, assembly of audit file should be completed. Yes, all of you have answered correctly. Within 60 days after date of auditor's report. Assembly of audit file should be completed within 60 days after date of audit report. This option is right. All other options are incorrect. Okay. Yes, Anmol, you are asking Does documentation of SA 230 and SA required separately or other file? No, these are to be maintained in one file only. The documentation has not to be done SA wise. I told you that audit file has to be maintained for each engagement. Okay. So therefore, documentation has to be kept for each engagement, not not a separate file has to be maintained for each essay. This would be ridiculous. Yes. Number 3. Who is the owner of audit documentation? Yes. Who is the owner of audit documentation? Question number 3. Who is the owner of audit documentation? Yes. So fairly simple, straight away question. Students, yes. Who is the owner of audit documentation? Yes. Anmol Patwa, yes. All others you are writing correctly. Auditor is owner of audit documentation. So we have learned that audit documentation is property of auditor. Audit documentation is the property of auditor. The audit working papers are owned by the auditor. It is his discretion to show the working papers, to give the extract of working papers to the client. It is his choice. He is not bound to share his working papers with the client. It is his choice. It is his discretion. He can share part of his working papers. He can share part of his audit document, the validity of work performed by him. Okay. So all of you have answered correctly. Auditor. Yes, Harsh Singh, yes, audit file should be maintained with financial statements. Financial statements तो होनी ही चाहिए ना उसमें. Yes. Fourth, which of the following is not a purpose of audit documentation? Which of following is not a purpose of audit documentation? Yes, question number 4. Which of the following is not a purpose of audit documentation? Yes. Yes. C is the right answer. This is not a purpose. This is a wrong choice. This is not a purpose of audit documentation. So students, audit documentation assists engagement team to plan and perform the audit. Obviously, like say we had learned that audit program is a form of audit documentation. So it assists team members to perform the audit. So this is the right option. Retaining a record of matters of continuous significance to future audits. Obviously, whatever you have documented, whatever things you have put into writing, okay, in your audit file as part of your working papers, you can refer to them in future if the need arises. And C is enabling conduct of quality control reviews. Sorry, D. Obviously, in future some issue arises and the firm is asked to prove uh, whether audit was conducted in accordance with the quality control standards or whether the audit was conducted qualitatively. Obviously, it is the audit documentation which comes to the rescue of the auditor. It acts as a proof that audit was conducted in accordance with standards on auditing, in accordance with applicable legal and regulatory requirements. But is the C option right? No, this is wrong. This is not a purpose of audit documentation, assisting management to take timely decisions. Now, how audit documentation can help management in taking timely decisions? Audit documentation तो मेरा है भाई. Audit documentation तो auditor का है. How it will help management in taking timely decisions? So this is wrong. Okay. Yes. So Srinivasan, you are saying please also arrange for case study. So let us do case study first. Yes. So students, you can open the module and go on to the case study. Yes. So CA Rajan Pillai is heading the engagement team conducting audit of a company. So understand the case study, students. CA Rajan Pillai is heading the engagement team conducting audit of a company. While audit is in progress, consider following issues regarding audit documentation. Yes. CA Rajan Pillai जो है वो एक he is heading the engagement team. He is head of the engagement team which is conducting audit of a company. Now following issues arose during audit documentation. Now क्या क्या issues है पहले ये पढ़ लीजिए. Audit program was prepared assigning responsibility for different type of work to be performed by team members. The engagement team consists of 4 members: Mohit, Rohit, Shobhit एंड सीए राजन. तो 4 टीम मेंबर्स हैं, 2 सीए फाइनल स्टूडेंट हैं और 2 पार्टनर हैं. ओके. शोभित एंड रोहित, सॉरी, शोभित एंड राजन. Shobhit and Rajan are partners and Mohit and Rohit are team members. They are CA final students. Okay. B is the team has determined materiality for financial statements as a whole. The team has assessed risk of material misstatements to be low. CA Shobhit is responsible for attending inventory count process and putting down its documentation part. During the course of audit, many related party transactions have come to notice. Yes, students. Please read the case study once again. Yes, yes, guys. Have you read the case study? Should we move to questions? Yes, students. Yes, students. Are you done with the case study? Have you read it? Should we move to questions? So while work relating to verification of revenue was assigned to Mohit in audit program. So ऑडिट प्रोग्राम में रेवेन्यू यानी कि सेल्स को चेक करने का काम किसको दिया गया था? मोहित को. मोहित वाज असाइंड दिस वर्क ऑफ चेकिंग रेवेन्यू. However, it is being performed by Rohit actually. ऑडिट प्रोग्राम में ये लिखा था कि मोहित की ड्यूटी है कि वेरिफिकेशन ऑफ रेवेन्यू के बारे में ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स परफॉर्म करना. इट वॉज हिज ड्यूटी, लेकिन एक्चुअल में काम रोहित ने किया. नाउ वेरिफिकेशन ऑफ ट्रेड रिसीवेबल्स was planned to be performed by Rohit in audit program. However, it is being performed by CA Rajan due to last minute practical issues. और ट्रेड रिसीवेबल्स के बारे में वेरिफिकेशन करना किसकी ड्यूटी थी? रोहित की, बट इट इज बीइंग डन बाय सीए राजन. सो द रोल्स हैव इंटरचेंज्ड. सो क्वेश्चन इज स्टेटिंग दैट ऑडिट प्रोग्राम में किसी और का नाम लिखा था, लेकिन एक्चुअल में वो काम किसी और ने किया है. सो विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग स्टेटमेंट्स इज मोस्ट अप्रोप्रिएट इन दिस रिगार्ड relating to audit documentation? Yes, study the statements, and which of the following statements is most appropriate? Yes. Audit program contains names of persons and work to be performed. It is immaterial whether work assigned to one person is performed by another. Audit program was already prepared. Only persons assigned specific responsibilities can perform these duties. It is necessary that audit program be suitably updated or notes given in working papers to this effect, so that planned duties are in accordance with actual work performance. Changes in audit program or notes clarifying the matter are required only when a person not forming part of engagement team is deputed to perform a duty. Otherwise, this issue of intershuffling of team members is frivolous. Yes, students, क्या आंसर होना चाहिए इसका? सो ऑप्शंस आपने चारों पढ़ लिए. क्वेश्चन समझ में आ गया स्टूडेंट्स आपको? इस ऑडिट में ऑडिट प्रोग्राम बना जिसमें कि कुछ काम मोहित को करना था और कुछ काम रोहित को करना था, लेकिन मोहित वाला काम जो है वो एक्चुअली रोहित कर रहा है और रोहित वाला काम सीए राजन कर रहा है. ठीक है, तो इसकी ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन में विच स्टेटमेंट इज मोस्ट अप्रोप्रिएट? यस, which statement is most appropriate as far as audit documentation is concerned? Yes, so guys, answer C is the right answer. Yes, many of you have written correctly. Answer C is the right answer. So पार्थ, लगता है आपको समझ आ गई है एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर वाला मैटर. सो ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन कैसी होनी चाहिए स्टूडेंट्स? हाउ शुड बी एन ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन? व्हाट शुड बी द फॉर्म and nature and extent of audit documentation? We had learned that audit documentation should be such that which would enable an experienced auditor to understand the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures. He should be able to understand the results of audit procedures performed and audit evidence obtained. So अगर ऑडिट प्रोग्राम में कुछ और लिखा हुआ है कि ये ड्यूटी इस आदमी की थी काम करने की और एक्चुअल में किसी और ने की है, सो हाउ another auditor who is reviewing the audit file, how he will come to how he will understand that which procedure was performed by whom? He would get confused. Okay, that is why answer is C. कि अगर ऑडिट प्रोग्राम में कुछ लिखा हुआ है और लेकिन एक्चुअल में काम किसी और ने किया है, तो वो आप उसके नीचे नोट दे दें, ऑडिट प्रोग्राम के नीचे यू गिव ए प्रॉपर नोट. ओके, और उसको यहाँ ऑडिट प्रोग्राम को आप अपडेट कर लें that this work was actually performed by this person, the duties were changed. As simple as that. So answer is C. So how you are writing, somebody is writing A and some are also writing B. So how you are writing A and B? Yes. A says that it is immaterial whether work assigned to one person is performed by another person. How it is immaterial? It is important because in its absence, other person, other auditor who is reviewing the file, he would be at a loss to know who performed the audit work. And how B is correct? You are saying that B option is stating that audit program was already prepared. Only persons assigned specific responsibilities can perform these duties. This option is also wrong. We had learned in chapter 2 that audit program can be modified. It is not static. It is not static. It is dynamic. It can be updated, keeping in view practical difficulties or keeping in view practical changes. Yes, is it clear to you all? Is it clear to the students who have given the wrong answer? Yes. Is it clear to the students who have given the wrong answer? Yes. Now we move on to question number 2. As regards materiality, which of the following statements is most appropriate in context of audit documentation? स्टूडेंट्स, ये क्वेश्चन जो है साथ में आपको पिछले चैप्टर्स में भी लेके जा रहा है. ये केस स्टडी आपको पिछले चैप्टर्स में भी लेके जा रही है. नाउ मेटेरियलिटी के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंट क्या रिक्वायरमेंट है डॉक्यूमेंटेशन की? ये स्टूडेंट्स, ए बी सी और डी. यस. As regards materiality, which of the following statements is most appropriate in context of audit documentation? As regards materiality, which of the following statements is most appropriate in context of audit documentation? Yes, option is C. So you have written correctly, guys. Materiality arrived on the basis of professional judgment along with the factors considered in determination has to be documented. Materiality is arrived on the professional judgment. You have read it in chapter 3. So what were the factors which have been considered in determination of materiality? These have also to be documented. Okay. And Jay Patel, how you are writing B? whatever amount has been determined can be documented in working papers, but factors have also to be stated. This is there in the chapter on risk assessment and internal control, chapter 3. When you will go there and you will see the documentation requirement, it is stated there that materiality depends upon the professional judgment, and the factors which have been considered for determination of materiality, these have also to be documented. Okay. Now question number 3. As regards team's assessment that risk of material misstatement is low, which of the following statements is odd one relating to documentation of risk? Now this question is again related to chapter 3. There was a topic, students, you remember in chapter 3, documenting the risk, कि जब आप रिस्क असेस कर रहे हैं तो उसके बारे में, रिस्क के बारे में क्या क्या डॉक्यूमेंट करोगे? सो कौन सा आंसर करेक्ट है इसमें स्टूडेंट्स? नंबर 3 में, एज रिगार्ड्स टीम्स assessment that risk of material misstatement is low, which of the following statement is odd one relating to documentation of risk? कौन सी ऑड वन है, कौन सी गलत है? Yes. Which one is wrong? Which one is odd one? Odd one कौन सी है students? Which one is odd one? Yes. So students, D option is odd one. Now, some of you are writing that you are confused between C and D. No, how C and D, how C is odd one? So students, when we had done chapter 3, when we had learnt about the risk of material misstatement, and we had learned that while documenting risk, there is discussion among engagement team members, and whatever the decisions have been reached, these have to be documented. So this point is okay. So what risk assessment procedures have been carried out for assessing the risk of material misstatement to be low? These have also to be documented. This is also perfectly logical. Now, detail about how understanding of each component of internal control was obtained. Now, we had learned about 5 components of internal control, students, like control environment, like entities business risk assessment process. So, we had learned these internal control components. So detail about how the auditor obtained understanding of each component of internal control has also to be documented. So if you see chapter 3 and go in the chapter on documenting the audit risk, you will documenting the risk, you will see that this point is also stated there. Okay. So is it clear to you guys? And D option is wrong. Why? Because precise calculation of risk of material misstatement is never done. It is a subjective judgment. Auditor does not calculate in percentage or fixed points that risk of material misstatement is so much. he assesses whether risk of material misstatement is high or low, or what is the probability, what is the chance of uh, of of material misstatements occurring in the financial statements. Okay. Yes, Manohar, you are asking why D not B. D is patently wrong. Precise risk measurement होती नहीं है कभी. B is correct because risk is assessed by performing risk assessment procedures. So I will show it to you in chapter 3. So students, for your clarity, I will show it to you in chapter 3. Yes. So here it is, yes, documenting the risk. This is the topic. So the auditor shall document. What will he document? Discussion among engagement team members. So this was the first point. Key elements of understanding obtained regarding each aspects of the entity and its environment and internal control components. So this is also correct. The identified and assessed risk of material misstatements, the risks identified. So all these are requirements relating to documenting the risk. Okay. And the risk assessment procedures performed, this is also there. So all the three requirements are there. So that is why B is not correct answer and D is the correct answer. You have to understand also that when risk assessment is done, risk assessment is not a precise calculation. It is a judgment only. Remember this funda. Remember this basic funda. Yes. Yes, guys, clear. Now question number 4. CA Shobit is responsible for attending physical inventory count of the company. Which of the following is not true in this regard relating to audit documentation? Now Shobit जो है, he is responsible for attending physical inventory count. He is responsible for attending physical inventory count. Now which of the following is false? तो इन्वेंट्री काउंट के बारे में क्या क्या चीजें डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं करनी है, कौन सी चीज डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं करनी है? विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग इज नॉट ए ट्रू इन दिस रिगार्ड इन रिलेशन टू ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन? यस, नॉट ट्रू यानी कि विच इज फॉल्स. यस, यस गाइस, यस, ऑप्शन डी इज फॉल्स. These three options are correct. Why? So date on which physical inventory count process was attended, वो तो कि आपने किस दिन कौन सा काम किया, ये तो ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन में डॉक्यूमेंट करना ही है, ये तो इट हैज टू बी पुट इनटू राइटिंग. It may also include photographs of that date. तो अगर वो कोई फोटोग्राफ्स इंक्लूड कर लेता तो वो भी बढ़िया बात है. इट मे इंक्लूड है, स्टैंडर्ड में कहीं नहीं ऐसा लिखा. स्टैंडर्ड में तो ये लिखा है कि आपको डॉक्यूमेंट करना है, बट इट मे इंक्लूड, इट इज ऑल्सो एन एडिशनल एविडेंस. डिटेल ऑफ टेस्ट काउंटिंग अंडरटेकन शुड फॉर्म पार्ट ऑफ ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन. सो ऐसे 501 में स्टूडेंट्स हमने क्या पढ़ा था? हमने पढ़ा था कि ऑडिटर को टेस्ट काउंट करना है. तो टेस्ट काउंटिंग तो ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का पार्ट है कि उसने कितने, क्या टेस्ट काउंट किया, जो भी स्टॉक्स पड़े थे उसमें क्या टेस्ट काउंट किया. तो ये भी ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का पार्ट है. सी इज डिटेल ऑफ ऑब्सोलीट गुड्स. सो एग्जिस्टेंस एंड कंडीशन ऑफ इन्वेंट्रीज उसको देखनी है. अगर कोई पुराने ऑब्सोलीट गुड्स हैं तो वो भी उसको डॉक्यूमेंट करना है, बिकॉज इट रिलेट्स टू एग्जिस्टेंस एंड कंडीशन ऑफ इन्वेंट्रीज. ओके. बट स्टूडेंट्स डी पॉइंट जो है कि स्टॉक्स कंफॉर्म टू क्वालिटी कंट्रोल स्टैंडर्ड्स इन अकॉर्डेंस विद लॉ. कि अगर सपोज किसी लॉ में ये है कि उस गुड्स की क्वालिटी ऐसी होनी चाहिए, तो उसका ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन से क्या मतलब है? उसका तो वो मैनेजमेंट का पार्ट है देखने के लिए कि गुड्स उस क्वालिटी को कंफर्म करते हैं. ओके. So it is not likely to be, D option is correct answer. It is not likely to be part of audit documentation. Now fifth, as regards related party transactions, which of the following should not be part of audit documentation? Which of following should not be part of audit documentation? Yes. Fifth answer is D. तो रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शन में स्टूडेंट्स ऑडिटर को देखना है कि कंपनी की रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शन पॉलिसी क्या है. दिस इज पार्ट ऑफ हिज ड्यूटी, इट हैज टू बी डॉक्यूमेंटेड. मैनेजमेंट रिप्रेजेंटेशन लेटर भी लेगा वो कि कौन कौन से रिलेटेड पार्टीज हैं. और ट्रांजैक्शन जो है आर्म्स लेंथ बेसिस पे है ये भी वो देखेगा. क्लोज लेंथ बेसिस पे तो नहीं होनी चाहिए. ओके. जो रिलेटेड पार्टी के साथ ट्रांजैक्शन है ऑब्वियसली दीज आर एट arm's length basis. So obvious answer is D. Okay. So students, this case study is over. So I hope students that you have gained the basic understanding of this chapter 6 on audit documentation, and you realize the significance of audit documentation, how important it is, and what purpose does it serve. Never students forget the importance and objective of audit documentation. Always remember that its basic purpose is that it can defend the auditor in case some action is brought against the auditor. Without audit documentation, the auditor would not be able to prove that audit was planned and performed in accordance with standards on audit. Without audit documentation, auditor would not be in a position to say that, look, I have conducted the audit in accordance with standards on auditing. Okay. So this important point, students, you have to always keep in mind. Yes. No, Manohar, close length basis we do not include as part of audit documentation because the auditor sees that related party transactions are at arm's length basis, that these are carried out at the same rate with the related parties as the company is carrying out with other third parties. Okay, so uh, there is obviously no documentation to show that such transactions are at close length basis. Close length is in fact a wrong term. Okay, so clear to you guys. So it's over for today. Thank you for hearing and watching. And it was nice talking to you once again, guys, and interacting with you once again. So see you again on coming Friday. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.